Hey, Cities Dakota community, it's Sam here. Over the weekend, I found a fellowship called the Interact Fellowship. It's a community of driven technologists, and it claims to look for diverse applicants who are first, uniquely insightful, second, open minded conversationalists, and third, risk taking self starters. I looked further into it because I thought, why not? Sounds like a great concept. And in order to apply, I realized that I actually was a little too old for the explicit age cutoff of being born after a certain time period. I will let people find that out themselves by including the link. But I am in the category of being able to be considered on a case by case basis. So, given those chances and also just the sometimes arbitrariness of applying to things, I figured that I might as well give it a shot. But the reason why I'm recording this to you all now is because the questions actually made me think a lot about this Substack and also just my work in the past year, 2 years or so that have just been really meaningful to me in ways that I'm continuing to figure out. So, in the spirit of just reflecting well on these questions, I hope that others, and it doesn't matter if you are interested in this fellowship or not, are also thinking about these things because one, the best part of Cities Decoded is me being able to spotlight other voices. We've welcomed the creator of the Era arc earlier this year, who gives us the daily tea on weekdays and keeps us all informed on what's happening with AI and crypto in a really nuanced and funny sense. We just welcomed Alif Nisa Palat, who is the co-lead of the DC AI Collective chapter, who writes beautifully on community and AI, much better than me, who works in community and AI. We welcome Jonathan Ben Simon, who is the biggest New York tech events hustler I know of and many people know of. And I just, as I was writing my responses, I was reflecting on both my community tech building experiences, my free speech experiences, and also hyping these other people up and more. So I wanted to share my responses to the written questions that the Interact Fellowship poses. I would encourage anybody who is a creative technologist who has those qualifications of being risk taking, self starting, wanting to have open minded discussions to check it out. The deadline is February 9th. So this is a little plug as well, I would say, for anybody interested in that. And yeah, I'm just going to talk about my responses, reflect on how far I feel like I have come in the past few years, and would love to hear other people and how they're thinking about things as well, either in the comments or when I see you all at an event or the next time we talk. So there's a couple of questions here. I think there's five in total, so that's what you can expect. And if that is something you are interested in, listen on. If not, and you prefer it to be written, I think that I will write it out in the Substack post. That is my intention. And if you're not interested at all, thank you for listening up until this point, and I really do hope you check out either the news pieces we're putting out, the community pieces, the events pieces, and more to come. We want there to be something for everyone. So the first big question is it asks you to think about your three core interests and why you care about these things. And I talked about how I think at this time, my three core interests are first, building community in tech, second, a free press, and third, progress. I started with what is my full time role right now, which I'm really lucky that my core interest aligns with that. I get to spend at least 40 hours, usually more, working in the community and tech every week. And I think with that exposure, you really get to understand where the strengths and improvements lie with where communities and tech right now. But I think regardless of that, I've understood very well now that without community, a lot of tech products cannot scale and reach as many people. And I think there are a lot of products out there who can do a blend of who can do either warmth or competency with their service, but hitting that sweet spot between both is, of course, very hard. And it's way easier when you have a passionate community advocating. And it's important to be able to give back to them, support the work that they are doing on the ground. And I think that community is that perfect blend of being able to recognize some really awesome people in the space. I then shifted over to talking more about my interest in the free press because it's rooted in free speech and freedom. And I used to be a podcast producer at a free speech organization. I think to me, a free press is so crucial to getting as close as possible to what the truth of the world really looks like. It's often said that journalists are tasked with writing the first draft of history, and with how fast tech moves, especially, it's so important to have an equally free and strong press who can cover all of those movements, which at times it just doesn't feel that way. I think there's definitely gaps, and hopefully Cities Decoded can fill in at least one of those. And then finally, I'm a progress lover. I mean, I love seeing how things can get better, seeing things that used to not exist now, and from the printing press to wherever AI is going. And obviously, progress can be scary and daunting. There's always trade-offs. Progress is not wholly good, but I think it provokes the right questions of how we steer progress in the best interest for humanity, and that's endlessly fascinating for me. The second question is, what do I think has been the biggest change to my beliefs or values in the past 2 years, and what caused that change? I think because of my experiences, it would have to be that a lot of people don't really misunderstand free speech. That's what I wanted to say. I feel like many people create exceptions to free speech that don't legally exist in the US. Of course, there are exceptions to the free speech, imminent incitement to violence, and I will let my former colleagues be able to educate on the other ones that I don't want to say even like a word wrong there. But yes, I know imminent incitement to lawless action, I think, is one of the correct ones. But hate speech isn't one of them. And I think people also tend to think about free speech in ways that censor opinions that you don't agree with or don't like. And then it's scarier when it happens at an organizational level with like jawboning or anti-SLAPP lawsuits. Again, please check out free speech organizations to better understand what those mean for you. And I think that realization is something that now working in community and tech spaces, I want to make sure that everyone feels empowered to speak of and say what opinions they have in this country. Um, Again, they just have a lot of leeway, and that's how we're going to get to the best solutions, whether that's in tech or any other important issues, is when we have diverse opinions and people don't feel like they're just following a group mentality, which it's really easy to do as someone who has been in that mentality before. So that's definitely my biggest change. I feel like free speech is not as well understood as it probably should be. The next question is, someone gives you $50,000 for a project that explicitly can't be a business. What's the project you work on and why? So I'm lucky that I feel like this is happening, not the 50K. That'd be insane. But my hobby right now is like what I would do, which is Cities Decoded. I love trying to build an AI focused version of the media sources I really admire, which include themes of a diversity of perspectives, really sharp journalism, getting voices that are way smarter than me to write for the publication, speak on the publication, podcast for it, etc. Obviously, media can exist in the forms of explicit business models, but this Substack of Cities to Code is truly a hobby for me. It's really cool to not only get my perspective on Substack, which is a great platform for individuals, but to get buy-in from other people and companies to help tell their stories of AI and the great work they're doing. I also think that Cities Decoded is really able to champion a diverse group of change makers and AI, which I will get to in a few questions. I would just put all 50K towards supporting whatever pieces or scoops they would want to follow. I'm with them all of the way, and that's where the money would go. All right, there's three more questions. So the first question out of the three is, what project or initiative I was proudest of in 2025, and what is my primary goal in 2026? And this was probably the easiest one. I was proudest of building the Notion community in DC. I became a Notion ambassador in 2025 of January, which allowed me to host events, create community content, make more templates. And I went from hosting events where only about 10 people would show up at the local coffee shop to easily between 50 to 100 attendees for the latest Notion launches after the annual Notion conference. And I was really, really happy to watch that community grow and have incredible partners, most notably the AI Collective, and just seeing where that growth was going. And hopefully we'll still go with new Notion ambassadors in DC over a pretty short period of time was incredible. I would say that translates pretty well to what my primary goal for 2026 is just continuing to understand what it really means to build a community in tech. I have so much to learn. I'm only a few months into my community tech role, but hopefully, given my experiences in the past few years, I've set myself up well, and I'm just really excited to make the Notion Ambassador community the best tech community in the world. All right. And then the second last question is whose voice should carry more weight in the tech ecosystem than it does today? Super easy to answer because I have some of the best voices contributing to Cities Decoded, but I wrote Alif, Nisa Palat, and Jonathan Ben Simon. Both are now contributors. And I think that with Alif, she writes beautifully, so beautifully about community AI. Please go check out her pieces and her pages. It's under the author Human Beyond Tech. She has A-level insights into community AI, and she will be part of just keeping that human touch in tech. John is hustling, just going to so many events every week. He has such good perspectives on events in AI and what's working in the partnership space, GTM, creators. So just the business side of tech, he really has, I think, a firm pulse on it. And also, he's a great guy. Both of them are great people. There's not a person who meets John or I live that isn't impressed with their ability to communicate their ideas. And they are such easy friends. Um, to talk with and to hang with. And I think these superstars cover so many nuanced aspects of tech, and I find it wildly impressive every time they do their thing. And I'm excited to do my part to promote both of them way more on Substack. But yeah, they both should be way bigger. And then the last extended response was to a question for who would you be most excited to find out was in the fellowship class? And I have to shout out my girl, Megan Chin. She just launched Fig, her AI powered career platform app. Go check it out. That is Fig, FIG. You can find her as Gen Z Bestie on Instagram for her whole process. I'm just so proud of her. She's one of the most consistent creators. I know she is killing it on Instagram. We co-host a podcast together with two of our other friends, Hillary and Austin. And I've had some experiences with her where she's just always down. I did a podcast festival in London last year, and she was in London, and she just did it with me despite her fear of public speaking, which I think is quickly melting away, but we killed it together. And she made my first podcast festival experience incredibly more meaningful. And I'm really honored to have my podcast be her first media appearance for the app launch. And that would have happened Wednesday, February 4th evening as a live stream. She's working so hard right now to figure out how to help young professionals, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I'm just fixing a typo. That's why I slightly paused. Figure out their careers in the age of AI, and I just think there are very few more pressing and noble causes to be doing at our age. So those are the questions, and I think anybody who is trying to make a difference in their space right now, whether that is tech or not, should think about those questions. And that was a big reason why I wanted to record my own thoughts on it, because I really do think that despite these questions being for a very specific fellowship and despite it being tech focused, I do think there's applications across the board. And I felt like when I was writing out my responses, it felt so two dimensional. Like I think something I really felt in the past few years is that text feels so limiting, and I would much rather meet someone in person. I would much rather hop on a call with them. And I guess this is my one way call. But yeah, you can just learn so much more about a person when you meet them. And that's something I keep in mind as I ramp up my own events in New York, and something that I really saw make a difference in DC when I was doing in-person Notion events rather than any virtual ones. I don't even think I did a Notion virtual event in DC because it didn't feel like it would scale or reach as big of an impact, at least for the DC market. And yeah, I would just really encourage anybody who is thinking about wanting to just make the most of their work, think about these questions. They will be in the description as well, along with I'm going back and forth on if I'm going to include my answers or not. But I think that yeah, it's something that I really enjoyed answering, and I thought that it could provide a better understanding of where I want to take Cities Decoded to. So two birds. Anyways, please check out the latest podcast episode that I recorded with the Creative the Air arc. We did the monthly tea that is on podcast platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Substack. I will have the podcast episode I did with Trustable and John Hopkins Gillespie out hopefully next week, early next week, and you can expect more news about what me and Trustable are getting up to. And until then, I hope you all have a great first week of February, and I will talk to all of you soon. See you tomorrow for the Daily Tea. Bye, guys.